Rain has a smell right before it falls, something like metal and whetstone, and that's the smell that wakes me up most mornings now. The shelter's roof leaks in the east corner, just above my cot, and I've learned to sleep curled toward the wall so the drip doesn't land on my face. It's not much of a life. But 6 months ago, I didn't have a roof at all, leaking or otherwise, so I'm not going to complain about a little water. My name is Mark Hill. I'm 24 years old, I'm an Omega, and until last winter I had a family who looked at me like I was something they'd accidentally tracked into the house. I won't go into all of it. The short version is that my designation came in late, at 22, which is rare enough that my parents treated it like a diagnosis instead of a part of who I am. There was a contract. There was a man twice my age that they wanted me to bond with for reasons that had everything to do with money and nothing to do with me. I ran the night before the ceremony with a duffel bag and $400, and I ended up here at a place called Harborlight, which is one of those Omega shelters that exists because the world hasn't quite figured out how to be kind to people like me yet. Harborlight isn't glamorous. The paint is peeling in the hallways, the heating groans like it's in pain, and the food is the kind of food that fills you up without ever quite satisfying you. But the people here don't look at me like I'm a problem. Mrs. Alvarez, who runs the place, calls me sweetheart without making it sound like an insult. The other residents, Theo, who's 17 and terrified of everything, and Priya, who's pregnant and glowing despite everything she's been through, they feel like the closest thing to a family I've had in years. This morning, though, something is different. I can feel it the second I walk into the common room because everyone is clustered by the window like a flock of birds that just spotted a hawk. Except the hawk in question is a sleek black car pulling into the gravel lot outside. "Who is that?" Theo whispers, like the car might hear him. "I don't know," Priya says, "but Mrs. Hen." Alvarez has been cleaning since 6 in the morning. She made me move my shoes off the stairs twice. Sue. I lean against the doorway, arms crossed, trying to look like I'm not curious when I absolutely am. The car door opens, and a man steps out, and for a second, the whole common room goes quiet in that way. A room does when something genuinely worth looking at walks into view. He's tall, taller than he needs to be, honestly, with dark hair that's been cut by someone who knew what they were doing, and a coat that probably costs more than every piece of furniture in this building combined. But it's not the coat or the car that makes the air in my chest go strange. It's the way he carries himself, like he's used to rooms going quiet around him and has decided, somewhere along the way, not to enjoy it. "That's an alpha," Priya says, unnecessary, because every Omega in this building can feel it the way you feel. A storm coming. Pressure, low and steady, like the air itself just got heavier. My instincts, the ones I'm still not entirely used to after only 2 years of living with them, prick up like the fur on the back of a cat. I take a step back from the window without quite deciding to. "Mark?" Theo asks. "You okay?" "Fine," I say, though my voice comes out thinner than I mean it to. "Just don't really do well with." I gesture vaguely at the window, at the car, at the entire concept of alphas. That, Mrs. Alvarez appears in the doorway like she's been launched from somewhere, smoothing down her cardigan, her usual warm and slightly chaotic energy replaced with something almost reverent. "Everyone, please. If you could give us the common room for a little while, that would be wonderful. Mark, sweetheart, can you help me put the kettle on?" I should say no. Every nerve in my body that remembers what it felt like to be handed over like a piece of property is telling me to go upstairs, lock my door, and not come out until the black car is gone. But Mrs. Alvarez has never once asked me for anything since I arrived here with nothing but a duffel bag and a fear of my own name, and so I find myself nodding, following her toward the kitchen, my heart doing something complicated and fast in my chest. The man steps inside just as I reach the kitchen doorway, and our eyes meet for exactly 1 second. His are gray. Not the flat gray of a rainy sky, but the gray of a sky right before it clears. The kind that has light behind it, waiting. And in that 1 second, something in my chest does a slow, lurching flip, like missing a step on the stairs in the dark. He doesn't say anything, neither do I. Mrs. Burses. Alvarez sweeps him toward the office, already chattering about the new roof and the donation and how grateful everyone is, and the moment is over before it's even fully begun. But my hands are shaking when I reach for the kettle, and I don't entirely understand why. I've donated to 11 shelters across the city in the last 3 years, and I've never once gone to see any of them in person. My assistant, Daniel, handles the wire transfers, the tax paperwork, the polite letters of thanks that I never read past the first line. It's cleaner that way, less complicated. I write checks because checks don't ask questions, don't look at you with gratitude you don't feel like you've earned, don't make you think about the reasons why you started doing this in the first place. But this morning, I told Daniel I wanted to see Harbor Light myself, and I still don't fully understand why. Maybe it's the anniversary. 6 years ago today, my brother Adam, younger than me by 4 years and Omega, the gentlest person I ever knew, died in a shelter not unlike this one. 2 weeks after our father threw him out of the house for the crime of existing as he was born to exist. I wasn't there. I was 26, building my company, telling myself that family complications weren't my responsibility, that Adam would be fine, that someone would help him. No one helped him. And by the time I went looking, it was too late. So I started donating, quietly, anonymously, a way of doing something without having to feel the weight of it too closely. Until this morning, when I woke up, and the weight found me anyway, the way it always does on this particular date. And I told Daniel to clear my schedule. The shelter is smaller than I expected, and shabbier, with peeling paint and a roof that the woman in charge, Mrs. Alvarez, warm-eyed and visibly nervous, apologizes for 3 times in the first 2 minutes. I tell her the roof will be repaired by the end of the month. I tell her there will be a fund for medical care, for job placement, for whatever the residents need that isn't currently being met. She keeps saying thank you, and I keep nodding, because I don't trust my voice not to do something embarrassing if I try to say, "You're welcome." And then, in the doorway to the kitchen, I see him. He's younger than me, 23, 24 maybe, with sandy hair that looks like it hasn't seen a proper haircut in a while, and eyes the color of strong tea, and an expression that flickers from curiosity to wariness so fast, I almost don't catch it. But I catch the rest of it. I catch the way my entire body goes still. The way the low hum of awareness that I usually keep locked down so tight I forget it's there, suddenly roars to life like a furnace. Someone just opened the door on. Omega. Not just any Omega. My instincts don't usually announce things this loudly. I've met dozens of unbonded Omegas over the years, at galas, at business dinners. In the ordinary course of living in a world where alphas and omegas exist side by side, and none of them have ever made the air feel like it's pressing against my skin from the inside. I don't say anything. I don't trust myself to. Mrs. Alvarez guides me toward her office, talking about budgets and bedrooms and a young man named Theo who's been having nightmares, and I follow her on legs that feel slightly disconnected from the rest of me. My mind circling back again and again to that 1 second of eye contact, like a tongue returning to a sore tooth. That's not possible, I tell myself. You don't even know him. But my body doesn't care what's possible. My body has apparently been waiting for that doorway, that face, those tea-colored eyes, for a very long time, and it has absolutely no intention of forgetting them now. I spend the next 2 hours doing everything I can to avoid being anywhere near Mrs. Alvarez's office, which is a difficult task in a building this small. I reorganize the pantry. I help Priya fold laundry, even though she insists she's perfectly capable of folding her own laundry, thank you, and that I'm just being weird. I sit with Theo and let him talk at me about a video game he's been playing, nodding along even though I lose the thread of the plot within 30 seconds. What I don't do is think about gray eyes. I am extremely successful at not thinking about gray eyes, the same way a person is extremely successful at not thinking about a song that's stuck in their head, which is to say, not at all. It's nearly noon when Mrs. Alvarez finds me in the laundry room, her face doing something I've never seen it do before. She looks giddy, like a kid who's just been told there's no school tomorrow. "Mark, sweetheart, I need a favor." Okay. Our guest is leaving in a few minutes, but before he does, I promised him a tour of the upstairs. He wants to see the rooms that need the most work, so the contractors know where to start. I have to take a call from the city about the zoning permit, and it absolutely cannot wait. Would you mind showing him around? It's just the hallway and the two empty rooms at the end. 5 minutes, tops. Every instinct I have says no, absolutely not. Find literally anyone else. BJ. But Priya is elbow deep in laundry. Theo can barely make eye contact with strangers on a good day. And the only other resident currently in the building is an elderly Omega named Walter, who communicates primarily through grunts and the occasional crossword clue shouted at no one in particular. Sure, I hear myself say. 5 minutes. Mrs. Alvarez beams at me like I've just agreed to perform minor surgery and hurries off toward her office, leaving me standing in the hallway with a laundry basket still in my arms and absolutely no plan for what to do with my face. He's waiting by the stairs. Up close, he's even more. I don't have a good word for it. Imposing isn't quite right, because he doesn't loom or posture the way some alphas do, like they're constantly auditioning for a part in a movie about themselves. He just is, the way a mountain just is, present in a way that makes everything around it feel smaller by comparison. He's got his hands in the pockets of that absurdly nice coat, and when he sees me, something in his expression shifts. Surprise, maybe, or recognition, though that doesn't make sense, because we've never met. He starts, then stops, like he's recalibrating. Mrs. Alvarez said someone would show me the upstairs rooms. That's me. I set the laundry basket down on the bottom stair, mostly because I need somewhere to put my hands that isn't fidgeting with the hem of my shirt. I mark Scott. He doesn't offer a handshake, which I'm grateful for, because I genuinely don't know what would happen if he touched me right now, and I don't want to find out in front of him. Thank you for doing this. I know it's probably not how you plan to spend your morning. It's fine. I start up the stairs, very aware of him a few steps behind me, very aware of the way the hallway suddenly feels narrower than it did this morning. The two rooms at the end have water damage from the roof. That one, I point to the door on the left, has a window that doesn't close all the way, so it gets really cold in winter. We haven't used it in months. He looks where I'm pointing, and for a second his expression goes somewhere else entirely, somewhere distant and quiet and sad, in a way that makes my chest ache without my permission. My brother's room looked a lot like this, he says, so quietly I almost don't hear it. Before. Before what? He blinks, like he's surprised he said anything at all, and the distant look folds itself away so fast, I wonder if I imagined it. Nothing. Sorry, it's not important. It's clearly important. It's clearly the most important thing in the world to him, written all over his face for the half a second he let it show. But I don't push, because I know better than anyone what it's like to have a wound that you keep carefully covered, and how it feels when someone pokes at it without meaning to. This way, I say instead, leading him to the second room. He follows. And when we reach the doorway close enough that I can feel the warmth radiating off him, close enough to catch the scent of him, something like cedar and rain, and something else underneath that I don't have a name for, but that makes my knees feel strange. I have to grip the doorframe to keep myself steady. He notices. Of course he notices. Alphas notice everything about Omegas. It's practically built into them. His gray eyes flick to my hand on the doorframe, then to my face, and something in his expression goes carefully, deliberately neutral, the way you'd smooth over a crack in a wall. Are you all right? He asks, and his voice has gone soft in a way that does absolutely nothing to help the situation. Fine, I say, too fast, just long morning. He doesn't push either. We stand there for a moment close enough that I can feel my own pulse in my throat, and neither of us says anything, and the silence stretches out like it's waiting for something neither of us is brave enough to do. Then, from downstairs, Mrs. Alvarez's voice calls up the stairwell. Something about the contractor on the phone, and the moment shatters like glass. I should go, Scott says, stepping back, putting careful distance between us. Thank you for the tour. Sure, I say, and watch him walk down the stairs, and don't understand why I feel like something important just left the building with him. I don't go back to the office. I tell Daniel to cancel my afternoon meetings, and then I sit in the back of the car for almost an hour outside Harbor Light, staring at nothing, trying to figure out what just happened to me. I've spent 6 years building careful walls around the part of myself that grieves Adam. I give money. I stay anonymous. I don't let myself feel the full weight of any of it, because if I did, I don't think I'd be able to function. And someone has to keep the company running, keep the donations flowing, keep doing something useful with the guilt instead of letting it eat me alive. And then I walked into that building and saw a young Omega standing in a kitchen doorway with tea-colored eyes and a wariness that reminded me so much of Adam in those last weeks that for one disorienting second, I thought my mind had simply broken, conjured a ghost out of grief and exhaustion. But he wasn't a ghost. He was real and warm, and his name is Mark. And when I stood close to him in that doorway upstairs, every instinct I have, instincts I usually keep locked down so tightly I forget they exist, woke up screaming a single word: mine. No, what that feeling is. I've read about it, heard about it from older alphas at the company who talk about it the way people talk about lightning strikes, rare, sudden, life-altering. A true bond resonance. The kind of thing that happens to maybe 1 in 1,000 alpha-omega pairs, where instinct recognizes something before the mind can catch up to explain it. I'm 32 years old. I've never felt anything like it in my life, and I felt it in a hallway looking at an omega who flinched when I got too close, who clearly has every reason in the world to be wary of alphas, who has no idea that I'm the anonymous donor that's about to fund the renovation of the building he's living in. If I tell him who I am, if I tell him anything about what just happened to me, I'm terrified of what it will do. Terrified he'll see me the way Adam's world saw Adam, as something to be managed, controlled, handled. Terrified that the moment he finds out an alpha feels something for him, the wariness in his eyes will turn to fear. And I will have ruined the one good thing my instincts have ever handed me before it even had a chance to begin. So I do the only thing I can think of. I call Daniel back. I need you to set up a recurring volunteer schedule, I tell him, Harbor Light. Twice a week. Don't put my name on it. Just list me as a contractor doing maintenance assessments for the renovation. There's a pause on the other end of the line. Are you sure, sir? That's not really. I'm sure, I say, and for the first time in 6 years, the weight in my chest feels less like grief and more like the beginning of something I don't have a name for yet. He comes back 2 days later. I'm in the garden. If you can call it a garden, it's mostly weeds and one stubborn rosebush that refuses to die no matter how badly we neglect it. When I hear the gate creak, and there he is in jeans and a gray sweater that somehow looks both more casual and more expensive than the coat from before, carrying a clipboard like it's a prop he's not entirely sure how to hold. You're back, I say, before I can stop myself, and immediately feel like an idiot, because of course he's back. Mrs. Alvarez told everyone at breakfast that a contractor would be coming twice a week to assess the renovation. I'm back, he agrees, and there's something careful in his voice, like he's testing the ground before he steps on it. Mrs. the Bow. Alvarez said it would be all right if I started with the garden. Apparently, there's drainage issues that are affecting the foundation. Sure, I say. I mean, I don't know anything about drainage, but sure. He smiles, just slightly, just at the corner of his mouth, and it does something unfair to my chest. I didn't expect you to. He hesitates, glancing at the rose bush. That's a hardy plant. Most things wouldn't survive being this neglected. It's stubborn, I say. Mrs. Alvarez says it reminds her of Walter. He's been here longer than anyone, and he's basically made of spite and crossword puzzles. That gets an actual laugh out of him. Quiet, surprised, like he wasn't expecting to laugh today and isn't sure what to do with the fact that he did. The sound of it settles into my chest like a stone dropping into still water, ripples spreading out long after the stone itself has disappeared. Can I? He gestures vaguely at the patch of ground near the foundation. I need to check the soil here. Mind if I... Go ahead, I say, and then, because my mouth apparently operates independently from my better judgment, I'll help. If you want. I don't have anything else to do. He looks at me for a moment, really looks in a way that makes me feel like he's reading something written on my face that even I can't see, and then nods, and for the next hour, we kneel in the dirt together, and he explains things about drainage and foundations that I don't understand a word of, and I find myself listening anyway, not for the information, but for the sound of his voice, low and steady, careful in a way that feels deliberate, like he's choosing every word with more care than the topic requires. At one point, our hands brush, both of us reaching for the same trowel, and he pulls back so fast you'd think the trowel was on fire. I look up at him, and for just a second before he masters his expression again, I see something there, something hungry and careful and afraid, all tangled together, and my heart does that strange lurching thing again, the thing it did the first time our eyes met. Sorry, he says. It's fine, I say, and mean it more than I expect to. We don't talk about it. We go back to the soil and the drainage and the stubborn rose bush, and by the time the light starts to go gold and long across the garden, something has shifted between us. Small, quiet, unspoken, but real. The way the first warm day of spring is real even before anything visibly blooms. I'll be back Thursday, he says when he finally stands, brushing dirt from his knees. I'll be here, I say, and watch him go, and spend the rest of the evening with a stupid, helpless smile on my face that I can't make go away no matter how hard I try. Thursday becomes a routine faster than I expect. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I arrive with my clipboard and my borrowed identity as the contractor, and somehow, without either of us ever quite deciding it, Mark ends up beside me for most of it. Sometimes he's actually helping. Sometimes he's just there sitting on the porch steps while I work telling me stories about Theo's video games or Priya's increasingly elaborate baby name lists or Walter's ongoing feud with the crossword puzzle in Tuesday's paper, which he insists is rigged against him personally. I learn things about him in pieces, the way you learn a song by hearing it on the radio over and over until suddenly you know all the words. I learn that he likes tea better than coffee, but drinks coffee because it's cheaper. I learned that he wanted to be a teacher before everything happened, and that he still sometimes helps Theo with his schoolwork in the evenings, patient in a way that makes something in my chest ache every time I think about it. I learn that he laughs more easily than he thinks he does, and that when he laughs for real, not the careful, polite laugh, but the surprised, unguarded one, his whole face changes, like a light switching on behind his eyes. I don't tell him about Adam, not yet. The wound is still too raw even 6 years later, and I'm afraid that if I open it in front of him, I won't be able to close it again, and he'll see all the broken parts of me before he's ready to. But 3 weeks into this routine, on a gray Thursday afternoon with rain threatening but not yet falling, he asks me something that catches me completely off guard. Can I ask you something? And you don't have to answer if it's weird. Sure, I say, setting down the trowel. The donor, he says, the one paying for all this. Mrs. Point. Alvarez won't tell anyone who it is, but do you know anything about him? Like, what he's like, or why he... He stops, frowning, like he's not sure how to finish the sentence. I just think about it sometimes. Someone out there cared enough to do all this, for people he's never met, and doesn't even want anyone to know it was him. I think about what kind of person does that. My chest goes tight. What do you think he's like? Mark considers this for a long moment, looking out at the garden, at the new drainage trenches, the patched section of fence, the rose bush that somehow, against all odds, started to bloom again. I think he's lonely, he says finally. I think something happened to him, something that hurt him, badly, and that he's never really gotten over. And I think he does this because it's the only way he knows how to say, I'm sorry, to someone he can't say it to anymore. He glances at me, almost shy. That probably sounds dramatic. Sorry. I can't speak for a moment. The rain that's been threatening all day finally starts to fall, light and soft, and neither of us moves to go inside. It doesn't sound dramatic, I manage, finally. It sounds, I have to stop, swallow, try again. It sounds like you understand him better than most people would. Mark looks at me, and something in his expression goes very still, very careful. The same look he gets right before he says something that costs him something to say. Scott, he says slowly, is there something you're not telling me? The rain falls harder, And for one long, terrifying moment, I consider telling him everything: the donations, Adam, the bond resonance, all of it. But the fear wins, the way it always does, and I shake my head and tell myself it's because I'm protecting him, when really I think I'm protecting myself. No, I say, nothing important. He doesn't believe me. I can see it in his eyes. But he doesn't push, and we sit in the rain together until Mrs. Alvarez calls us in for dinner, and the moment passes, but it doesn't disappear. It just waits, the way storms wait on the horizon, gathering. I know he's lying to me. I've known for weeks, actually. There's something about the way Scott talks about the donor, something too personal, too raw, that doesn't match the careful distance of someone discussing a stranger. But I don't push, because I've learned, the hard way, that pushing people to reveal things before they're ready usually just makes them run. And because, if I'm honest with myself, I'm scared of what I'll feel when he tells me. Because here's the thing I haven't said out loud, not even to Priya, who has started giving me looks. Every time Scott's name comes up, I think I'm in love with him. It's a stupid, reckless, terrifying thing to be, given everything. I'm an Omega who ran from one Alpha trying to claim me like property, and here I am getting weak in the knees over another Alpha. Except this one has never once made me feel like property, has never once made me feel like anything except seen in a way I didn't know I'd been starving for until he started looking at me like that. He's careful with me in a way that feels deliberate, almost painfully so. He never gets too close unless I close the distance first. He asks before he touches anything that's mine. A book, a mug, the edge of my sleeve when the wind almost blows a piece of paper out of my hands. At first I thought it was just good manners. Now I think it's something else. I think he's scared of his own instincts around me, scared of wanting something he doesn't think he's allowed to want, which would explain everything, if it's true. The way his scent changes when I get close. Cedar and rain, deepening into something richer, warmer, like a fire catching. The way his hands clench when our fingers brush, like he's holding himself back from something. The way he sometimes looks at me when he thinks I'm not paying attention, with an expression so full of longing it makes my chest hurt. I want to tell him. I want to tell him that I feel it too, whatever it is, this thing that hums between us like a tuning fork finding its match. But every time I open my mouth to say it, I think about my parents, about the man they tried to bond me to, about the way swanting and Omega and Seinga and Omega are apparently not the same thing for most alphas, and the words die in my throat. So instead, on a Tuesday in early spring, with the rose bush in full, stubborn bloom, and the garden finally starting to look like something other than a disaster, I do something braver than telling him. I touch him first. He's kneeling by the fence, checking the new boards he installed last week, and I crouch down beside him, close enough that our shoulders are almost touching, and I reach over and rest my hand on his arm. He goes very still, so still I can feel his pulse jump beneath my fingers, fast and hard, like something caged. "Mark," he says, very carefully, very quietly, like my name is something fragile he's afraid of dropping. "You don't have to say anything," I tell him, my heart hammering so loud I'm sure he can hear it. I wanted you to know that I'm not scared of whatever this is. I'm not scared of you." He turns to look at me, and the careful mask he wears, the one that slipped, just slightly, every time we've been alone together for the last few weeks, finally, completely, falls away. And what's underneath it isn't anything I expected. It's not hunger, or not only hunger, it's grief and hope, and something so achingly tender that I have to remind myself to breathe. "Mark," he says again, and his voice cracks, just slightly, on my name. "There's something I need to tell you, something I should have told you weeks ago. And I'm scared that once I do, everything's going to change, and not in the way I want it to." The rain that's been threatening all afternoon starts, soft and slow, pattering against the leaves of the rose bush. "Tell me," I say, "whatever it is, I want to know." And so, kneeling in the dirt with rain falling around us, Scott Head tells me everything. I tell him about Adam first, because everything else only makes sense once he understands that part. I tell him about my little brother, gentle, soft-spoken, and Omega in a family that treated that fact like a stain to be scrubbed out. I tell him about the night our father threw Adam out, about the years I spent telling myself, It wasn't my responsibility building my company, building my life, while my brother lived in a shelter not unlike this one. Cold and frightened and alone until 2 weeks later he wasn't alive anymore. I tell him about the guilt, the way it followed me for 6 years, the way I learned to manage it by writing checks and staying anonymous, by doing something without ever having to feel the full weight of what I hadn't done in time. And then I tell him about the donation to Harborlight, about being the anonymous donor he spent weeks wondering about walking into this building 6 weeks ago on the anniversary of Adam's death, intending to write a check and leave, and instead seeing him. Mark. Standing in a kitchen doorway, and feeling something happen inside me that I'd never felt before in my life. It's called bond resonance, I say, my voice rough, my hands shaking slightly where they're resting on my knees. It's rare. Most alphas never experience it. It's instinct recognizing something before the mind catches up. And the second I saw you, every instinct I've started screaming one word over and over, and I've spent 6 weeks terrified of what would happen if you ever found out, because my voice breaks. Because the last time someone in my family looked at an Omega and decided they wanted something from them, it ended with my brother dead in a building like this one. And I couldn't. I couldn't be another person who looks at you and only sees what they want. I needed you to know me first, as a person, not as an alpha, not as a donor, just Scott. The rain falls harder, soaking into my sweater, into Mark's hair, and neither of us moves. That word, Mark says finally, quietly. What is it? The one your instincts keep saying. I look at him, really look at the rain on his eyelashes, the careful hope in his tea-colored eyes, the way he hasn't pulled his hand away from my arm even once through all of this. And I let myself for the first time in 6 years say the thing my instincts have been screaming since the moment I walked into this building. Mine, I say, barely above a whisper. It says mine. CB. But Mark, that's not a claim. I would never. It's just what my instincts call it. What it actually means is, I have to stop, swallow, try again, because this is the part that matters, the part I need him to understand more than anything else. What it means is that some part of me recognized you before I even knew your name. And that part of me has been waiting every single day since for you to feel something, anything, back. And if you don't, that's all right. I'll still come on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'll still... Scott. I stop. Mark is crying. Quietly. The rain mixing with the tears so it's hard to tell which is which. But he's smiling too, in a way that makes my chest feel like it's cracking open from the inside. I feel it too, he says. I've felt it since that first day in the kitchen doorway. I didn't have a word for it. I just knew that every time you walked into a room, something in me went quiet, in a way it's never been before. Like I'd been holding my breath my whole life and didn't know it until you were there. Mark, I'm not scared of you, he says again, fiercer this time, his hand tightening on my arm. I'm scared of a lot of things, Scott. I'm scared of what my parents would say, and I'm scared of bonds, and I'm scared of being owned, God, by someone, even by accident, even by instinct. But I'm not scared of you. I haven't been, not for weeks, so, he takes a breath, steadying himself. So what happens now? What does this mean? For us? And here, kneeling in the rain in a garden that started as weeds and a stubborn rosebush, I tell him the truth, the whole truth, the one that's been sitting underneath everything else this entire time. It means, I say slowly, carefully, that I'm not going anywhere. It means that whatever this is, whatever pace you need, whatever you're comfortable with, however long it takes, I'm here for all of it. Bond resonance doesn't come with an expiration date, Mark. It's not going to fade if we take this slow. My voice goes soft, almost reverent. I just want to know you, all of you, for as long as you'll let me. Mark laughs, a wet, surprised, completely unguarded laugh, the kind that makes the lights switch on behind his eyes. And then, before I can say anything else, he leans forward and kisses me. It's soft and hesitant and tastes like rain, and it's the single best thing that has ever happened to me in my entire life. When we finally pull apart, both of us breathless, both of us soaked to the bone and grinning like idiots, Mark rests his forehead against mine. For the record, he says, I think your brother would be really, really proud of you for everything you've done, for Harbor Light, for all of it. My eyes burn, and this time I let them. I hope so, I say. I really hope so. The rain keeps falling soft and steady on the rosebush that refused to die on the garden, that's slowly coming back to life on the two of us kneeling in the mud, holding on to each other like we've been waiting our whole lives to find exactly this. Because we have. The weeks after that are different. Not in any dramatic, sweeping way, but in small ones, the kind that matter more because of how quietly they arrive. Scott stops pretending to be a contractor, mostly because Mrs. Dash. Alvarez took one look at the two of us holding hands over breakfast and burst into tears, declaring she'd known it the whole time, which I'm fairly certain is a lie, but a kind one. The whole shelter finds out who he is within about a day, not just that he's Scotthead CEO of a company most of us had vaguely heard of, but that he's V Donors, the anonymous benefactor who funded the new roof, the new heating system, the fund that's already helped Priya secure an apartment for herself and the baby. I worry at first that everyone will treat him differently. Will start performing gratitude at him the way people sometimes do around money, all that careful, deferential distance. But it doesn't happen, not really, because Scott doesn't gletstate it happen. He still shows up on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He still kneels in the garden dirt in jeans that are probably worth more than my entire wardrobe. He still listens to Theo talk about video games with the same patient attention he gave it when he was pretending to be a contractor, and Theo, who flinches around most strangers, let alone alphas, starts slowly to relax around him in a way that makes something in my chest go warm every time I see it. We take it slow. Scott meant it, every word of it. There's no rush, no pressure, nothing that feels like the suffocating weight of expectation that I associate with every other interaction I've ever had with an alpha. Some nights we just sit together on the porch, not even talking, just being his shoulder against mine, his scent, cedar and rain, and underneath it now, something warmer. Something that I think might just be happiness, wrapping around me like a blanket. He tells me more about Adam, over time. Not all at once, but in pieces, the way I told him about my own life. He shows me a photo, once, a young man with sandy hair and tea-colored eyes, laughing at something off camera, looking so much like a version of Mech that it takes my breath away. He would have liked you, Scott says, quiet, looking at the photo with an expression that's sad and soft at the same time. I think he would have been really happy. That something good came out of all of it. I take his hand and don't say anything, because there's nothing to say that would be enough, but I think he understands anyway. One evening, about 2 months after the garden, after the rain, after everything, Scott asks me to come stay at his place for the weekend, not to move in, not yet, just to visit, to see the apartment he's lived in alone for 6 years, the one that he admits has never quite felt like home. It's beautiful, in the way I expected. Clean lines, big windows, a view of the city that takes my breath away. But it's also strangely empty, like a house that's been waiting for someone to fill it, and, as I walk through it, Scott trailing a careful step behind me. I find myself imagining things I haven't let myself imagine in years. A kitchen with 2 people cooking in it. A bookshelf with both our books mixed together. A life that isn't just surviving, but living. You're doing the thing, Scott says softly from the doorway of what he calls the spare room. Though it's bigger than my entire dorm at the shelter and currently empty except for a single chair by the window. What thing? The thing where you imagine something and then look guilty about imagining it. He crosses the room slowly, giving me every chance to step back if I want to. I don't, and stops close enough that I can feel the warmth of him, the steady hum of his presence that I've come to crave like sunlight. You don't have to look guilty, Mark. Whatever you're imagining, you're allowed to want it. I want you to want it. It's too soon, I say, automatically, even though my chest aches with how badly I don't mean it. Is it? He asks, gently. Or is it just that no one's ever told you it was okay to want things before? I don't have an answer for that. I just lean into him, and he wraps his arms around me, carefully, the way he always does. Like I'm something precious he's still not entirely sure he's allowed to hold. And for a long moment, we just stand there in the empty spare room with the big window and the single chair, and I let myself imagine just a little what it might look like to fill it. 6 months after the garden, I take Mark to the cemetery where Adam is buried. I haven't been in 3 years. I used to come every year on the anniversary, but it got to the point where the visits felt less like remembrance and more like punishment, kneeling in front of a headstone, apologizing to someone who couldn't hear me, for things I couldn't undo. But this time is different. This time Mark is beside me, his hand in mine, and when we reach the small, simple headstone, Case Adam, he's a Adam had beloved brothers. I find that the weight in my chest, the one I've carried for 6 years, feels lighter than it has in a long time. Hi, Adam, I say quietly, and it's the first time I've spoken to the headstone in years without my voice shaking. I brought someone I want you to meet. Mark crouches down beside the grave, and for a moment he doesn't say anything, just looks at the headstone, at the dates, at the small, simple carving of a flower that I chose because it was the kind Adam used to grow on our windowsill against our father's wishes, just because he liked the way they looked. Hi, Adam, Mark says softly. I'm Mark. I live at Harborlight, the shelter your brother's been helping. I just wanted you to know. Everything he's done, all of it, it's made such a difference to so many people. To me. His voice catches, just slightly. And I love him, I really, really do. So, thank you for having a brother who turned all that grief into something this good. I have to look away for a moment, blinking hard, because the words, I love him, said so casually, so easily, like they're the simplest truth in the world, hit me harder than I expect. We stay for a while, the three of us, though only two of us are really there, in any way that matters, but it doesn't feel that way, not really. It feels like a circle finally closing, like something that's been broken for 6 years, quietly, gently, settling back into place. On the drive home, Mark falls asleep against my shoulder, the city lights sliding past the window, and I find myself thinking about the spare room with the big window, about the future I'd started cautiously to imagine, not just for myself, but for both of us. I don't say anything. There's no rush. We have time, all the time in the world now, to build whatever this is going to become. But that night, after I've carried Mark half asleep to the bedroom and tucked the blankets around him and watched him settle peaceful into sleep, I sit by the window for a long time looking out at the city, and I let myself feel fully for the first time in 6 years something other than grief. I let myself feel hope. A year after the garden, Scott asks me to bond with him. He does it badly in the most wonderful way. Drops the small velvet box while trying to get down on one knee, scrambles to pick it up, knocks over a vase in the process, and ends up apologizing to the vase before he even gets to the actual question. I laugh so hard I almost don't hear him ask, and when I finally do hear it, Mark, will you bond with me? Not because instinct says so, because I choose you. Every single day, for the rest of my life, I choose you. I don't even need to think about my answer. Yes, I say, pulling him up off the floor, kissing him before he can finish apologizing to the vase a second time. Yes, obviously, yes. The bonding ceremony is small. Mrs. Praise. Alvarez cries through the entire thing, predictably. Theo, now 18 and considerably less terrified of the world than he used to be, gives a toast that's somehow both touching and deeply embarrassing. Priya's daughter, now a year old, spends the whole reception trying to eat the flower arrangements, which Scott finds endlessly delighted by, in a way that makes my chest go warm every time I think about it. We rebuilt the garden together that first spring after the bonding, properly this time, not just drainage and patched fences, but real flower beds, a little path, a bench where residents can sit and read. The rose bush is still there, more stubborn than ever, blooming every year despite, or maybe because of, everything it's been through. Sometimes, in the evenings, Scott and I sit on that bench together, his arm around my shoulders, my head against his chest, listening to the sounds of the shelter behind us. Theo's laughter. Priya's daughter shrieking with delight at something Mrs. Nay, Mrs. Alvarez calling everyone in for dinner, and I think about the duffel bag and the $400 and the night I ran, terrified, into the dark with no idea where I was going or what I'd find. I found this. I found him. I found a garden that grew, despite everything, into something beautiful. And every single day, when Scott looks at me, with that quiet, steady warmth, that careful, patient love that never once made me feel like I was something to be owned, only ever something to be cherished. I think about what Adam might say if he could see us now. I think he'd be proud. I think he'd be happy. And I think, somewhere, in whatever way the people we've lost watch over the people we've found, he is. If you made it to the end, you're my kind of person. Leave a subscribe, comment down your favorite part of the story, and if you want early access to videos, exclusive content, or just want to support the channel, hit that join button right below the video. Even one member genuinely means the world to me. See you in the next one.